Welcome to today's episode on mentally healthy lifestyles. We are going to be talking about one of my favorite topics ever, stress. Today you're going to learn about how stress can support your mentally healthy lifestyle, how you can manage stress in your life, and how you can be sure that stress will never upend your life, but hopefully keep you grounded, supported, and well into your mentally healthy lifestyle. So what is stress and how can you make it work for you? Well, first off, when we are talking about stress, we're talking about anything that really kind of takes our bodies and our brains and our minds out of the here and now, out of the kind of more restful, calm, balanced state that we are typically in. So that means almost anything can be stressful. It can be as stressful as not making it to work on time, getting behind on some bills, or maybe as simple as not making the matinee you had hoped to catch. So what that means, the first S in stress can stand for subjectivity, because it really is your interpretation of what is causing you stress that can increase or decrease how you experience that event. When it comes to talking about stress, the author, the expert I love to go to is none other than my hero, Dr. Robert Sapolsky. He is a Stanford neurobiologist and stress expert, and in his book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, he gives us a perfect outline of what stress is, how it impacts our body, and the different ways that we can cope and manage that stress. When we're talking about stress in our body and how we respond to it, there are two basic kind of ways that we can go about it. And categorically, I like to think of short-term stress and long-term stress. So let's first begin to talk about short-term stress, how long it lasts, what the experience entails, and some of the benefits. Short-term stress is anything lasting a few minutes to maybe even a few hours. Something relatively short in length, something you're aware of, and maybe even something that will finish as soon as that duration comes to a close. So with the short-term stress, our body is actually getting us ready to rise to the occasion, whether it's to run from a threat or pursue a goal. Our bodies are responding in ways that are getting our hearts to race, our blood to pump, and possibly our muscles to move. This is one of the reasons why exercise to help with your stress reduction is so important. We'll talk about that a little later. In Robert Sapolsky's book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, the answer's in the title. Because zebras, unlike humans, turn their stress response off when the stressor is over and out of sight. But what do we humans do? We can take stress with us everywhere we go. We can stress in the car, we can stress at work. Heck, we can even stress while we're sleeping, believe it or not. Now, maybe not while you're sleeping, but how stress impacts your sleep is certainly a possibility. So why might we have stress? Well, quite simply, the stress response is really what we're concerned with. And what we know about it is it helps keep us alive. It helps us socialize, and it helps preserve us for the next moment in life. And that really is the essential focus of our stress response system. So when the threat is over, the idea is to let it reside. If the stress keeps going on and we continue to operate that stress response system, that's when we start finding ourselves in some different areas and potentially some problems. When we're talking about short-term stress, there are a number of benefits. For example, you might have enhanced memory. You might have that blood flow. You might have the ability to run a mile or two. That's fantastic, especially if you're having to avoid a threat or find safety. The problem is that we as human beings, as Homo sapiens, as the cognitive creatures that we are, and this is the key here to really understanding the stress and stress response system for mental health, is that we can think ourselves into activating that stress response system. And that right there is one of our main emphasis in our channel for mentally healthy lifestyles, because again, our focus is mental health. Let's say we're dealing with anxiety And that in and of itself can cause stressors. Well, what if you continue to have anxiety about, where you're gonna go for your social gathering? And that's causing you stress. And that's rising your heartbeat, rising your blood pressure, and maybe wanting you to get out of here. If we are aware that we can think ourselves into stress, we don't need to add any extra stress that the world is already contributing. So for example, in the situation of a social gathering, you may want to understand that while you are going to experience some stress, that stress is not going to last forever. And as a matter of fact, it might even help you rise to the occasion. And who knows, maybe you hit the dance floor. So that's a little bit about how our bodies will respond in the immediacy of short-term stress. For us, we are really concerned about the consequences of long-term stress. Because you see, when you're running long-term stress, you're not turning off the stress response system and you're not beginning the recovery part of the process. In short, you can't be two places at once. And that's really what our stress response system is doing. It's either helping us get away or helping us calm down and get us back to our stable, balanced spot. When we look at stressors, long-term and short-term, we need to be aware that in any instance, our own minds and brains can take us into those places. Now, for those of us dealing with mental health, and we may have histories of trauma, so that can bring in additional stressors that maybe we're not aware of, but that's for our other video on From Trauma to Transformation. Either way, stress is involved in the immediacy of the moment, but when we engage it for too long, we begin to suffer some of the long-term consequences of stress. Let's talk about that now. So in this channel, we don't use too much jargon. We try and stay away from that. But there's one invaluable model that many helping professionals use. It's called the BPS model. And what that stands for is biopsychosocial. This is a model that came about in the 1970s and has been used the world over to help helping professionals assess where a person's at, understand how they're being impacted, and hopefully help develop some interventions and solutions. So again, that's the biology, the psychology, and the social environmental circumstances of a person. So now that you know about your biopsychosocial model, let's take a look at how stress impacts each of those areas, just so you'll have an understanding as we move forward. So your biology, when we're talking about the biology, and especially when we're concerned with mental health, we're really talking about the brain, we're talking about the nervous system, and other areas of our body as well. But when we're experiencing that stress, we need to realize that some of the areas of our brain that are responding are mostly associated with danger, mostly associated with safety and emotions. Not that your frontal cortex and executive thinking is gone, right? But most of that attention is being given to areas that help facilitate survival and safety. You may have heard of your limbic system. It's a little area in the brain where many emotions and memories and other type of instances such as hormonal output are controlled, helping you move from moment to moment or have emotions so that you know where to move to in order to stay safe. The point is that stress can actually redirect your brain's activity to be focused in those areas that are focused on emotionality, focused on fear, and focused on safety and threat. Now, what that's doing to the rest of your nervous system is it's sending out signals, chemical communications that say, speed up, let's go, get out of here, freeze. And so when we are having this biological experience, on the short term, that may be fine. However, in the long term, for that long-term stress in our biology, we can begin to be worn down in how we repair from that. Again, why zebras don't get ulcers, therein lies the key. Because the reason we get ulcers and they're stress related is because it actually kills off or it prevents the immune system from responding and rebuilding the stomach lining. When we engage stress, we are trying to flee, we are trying to fight, but we are mostly trying to stay safe. So our biology is experiencing all of this on a short term, but a long term. We have what are known as stress hormones. You may have heard of these stress hormones, adrenaline or epinephrine. as well as the glucocorticoids such as cortisol. Now, when those are being pumped out of your body, your adrenal glands, what hormones are doing is I like to call them hormone helpers. Because essentially, hormones are being secreted from glands into your bloodstream to go throughout all parts of your body to help move, to help speed up, to help slow down. And again, those stress hormones are telling everything, speed up, keep going. Now's not the time to stop. How those ultimately will be impacting inside the brain if we have too much stress hormones for too long, they can actually begin to even engage depression. And we're gonna get into that and a lot more in some of our other videos and in the book, of course. But what you need to know is that your body produces something called dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure. If you are running chronic stress for too long, those stress hormones are actually getting up into your brain and affecting those circuits that are helping produce those neurotransmitters such as dopamine. And the reason it's beginning to shut off effectively is because you're not going to be rewarded for being overly stressed. It's your body's way of saying what's going on is no longer pleasurable, you're not being rewarded, and it's time to slow down. You may have been asked when you have a depression or if you've experienced depression, if any stressful events came before that preceded the depression. And this is exactly why. Because when you're running those stress hormones, when you're running for your life, you're not recovering, you're not repairing, and your brain chemistry is actually changing as a result of having too many stress hormones for too long. So that is why that part of the biology is so important. But it doesn't stop there, because what does stress also change? It changes our psychology. It changes the way we think. If you're stressed running for your life, what kind of thoughts might you be having? Probably thoughts of fear, probably thoughts of safety. When we consider how stress can cause depression, what kind of thoughts might you be having when you're depressed? Guilt, shame, fatigue, right? You're not feeling up to maybe doing any activities that would support your mentally healthy lifestyle. So stress can cause your thoughts then to even be redirected to areas that maybe aren't so beneficial for your mentally healthy lifestyle. For example, stressed out thinking can cause you to be more emotional and less executive functioning with your decision making. We know this because over time, your ability to think and use your frontal cortex, if you're too stressed out, you're just not going to have the brain capacity to do so, as well as it's not going to be where your focus is. You may be thinking down, right? You may be depressed. So that is going to be a contribution to your mental health one way or another. So when we're talking about the biopsychosocial model and how stress impacts us with our mentally healthy lifestyles, we are really concerned about avoiding some of the thinking that can obviously get us into trouble, make us feel depressed, make us feel like maybe not doing much, which again can lead to other risky behaviors. So lastly, of the biopsychosocial model, we have our social environmental lives and how stress can impact that. If we're running chronic stress, maybe we don't feel like taking care of ourselves. Maybe we don't feel like taking care of our environments where we live, and we're not living with a nurturing environment, nurturing social relationships. Maybe chronic stress is you wanting to avoid people. Right there is a great example of how stress can impact your social life. If you get so stressed out that you don't even want to see anybody, well, once we talk about solutions to stress, you're going to find out relationships are one of the best things you can do. Social support. I hope by this point in our video, you're starting to think, oh my goodness, stress has all kinds of powerful effects and can really change my body, my thoughts, and my social life in many, many ways. If you're thinking that right now, excellent, because that's what we're building on, and that's what we're going to continue to move through in this video as we learn how you can have success with stress and support your mentally healthy lifestyle. So now when we think about types of stressors, again, you can have many, many stressors, but we really like to think about daily hassles and major life catastrophes, because not every stressor has the same impact or same value for your life. And we don't want you to start getting more stressed about thinking about stress. So try and think about the type of stressors maybe you're dealing with in terms of daily hassles, getting the kids to school, getting yourself to work, going to the grocery store, a number of things that really make up our daily living that can really be hassles and cause us stress. When you become aware of the type of stressors you have, again, you're starting to gain some power over your stress and some understanding of what things in your life are actually causing stress, because not everything causes stress. So some of these major catastrophes, these crises, again, those are much larger in nature and may even begin to border on the trauma side of things, which, as I said in another video, we'll address. But the idea is that not every stressor is equal in proportion and or meaning. So that is the idea behind trying to get a sense of what type of stressors are you dealing with in life. Do you have mostly daily hassles? Are you dealing with catastrophes right now? When you become aware of those stressors, you can also then begin to reflect on that biopsychosocial model you now know about. And maybe you need to get a little extra sleep so that you can then support your psychology as well as your social life. And where those stressors are at in relation to your biopsychosocial model is also a point of empowerment. So now that we've talked about stress, short-term stress, long-term stress, the effects on the biopsychosocial model, and a little more about Robert Sapolsky's book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, let's look at some of the stress management and coping techniques that are scientifically proven and can begin to help you immediately. So now let's go through a few ways that you can cope and manage your stress. One of the ways, exercise. Now, I'm sure you've all been told exercise this, exercise that, and you know the value, you know the importance of it for your physical health, but it can be extremely important for your mental health. And as a result of it being a way of coping with your stress, and we realize the relationship between stress and mental health, stress and depression, exercise is a must, I would say, because part of also what happens is when you're stressed out, you get all this energy in here and you really need to get it out. And so that can be a huge help to how you experience the stressor as well as recover from that stress. But exercise, just whatever, isn't what's going to work. What's going to work is it's going to need to be on a daily or regular basis, as well as it needs to be something you like. For example, if you don't like going to the gym but prefer to go hiking, then hiking would be the right route for you for your exercise. However, if you do like the gym, you're going to find a lot of additional benefits there with social support and being around an environment that, again, is empowering healthy living. Wherever you go and whatever you do for your exercise, the key is it needs to be regular and it needs to be something that you like. Another way you can reduce your stress is with meditation. Now, a lot of us are being more mindful in our modern world and are taking time to meditate. There are different lengths and different styles of meditation, but from everything I've heard, about 12 to 20 minutes, if you can kind of get to that, you're going to be looking at a good, solid meditation practice. However, maybe 5 minutes. And here's the other thing, is maybe meditation doesn't work for you. Maybe it drives you more anxious than you would really want, right? And maybe the idea of meditating causes you stress. So again, that may not be the one for you. But if you do meditate and you're looking for some meditation techniques, there are two places I want to refer you to for meditative practices. First is drdanielsiegel.com and his Wheel of Awareness practice. It's a fantastic mind training practice, but better than that, it's a meditative practice that's going to support your mental health and your mentally healthy lifestyle. Again, we've talked about Daniel Siegel in our Healthy Mind Platter video, and that would be part of your time in practice. So if you're meditating, it's part of those healthy activities, but it's also going to give you that internal experience to hopefully develop some calm and tranquility. So again, drdanielsiegel.com, and that's the Wheel of Awareness. You may be interested in the app Muse. Now I know there's lots of different apps, but I favor that app because it was recommended by a sleep doctor in another book we'll talk about later. You now know 2 ideas to go for your meditation: drdanielsiegel.com with the Wheel of Awareness, or the Muse meditation app. It has guided meditations, a headband that measures your brain waves, and is a fantastic way of keeping track and, dare I say, gamifying your meditative practice. Now, another one that maybe you practice or don't practice is about religion. So another area that you can engage in for coping and stress reduction is religion. The best social support, the best deep ways of living and connecting to meaning and other things that are proven to help reduce your stress. What might be some of the things going on if you're a practicing person of faith or religion? Well, first off, you're acknowledging the world is much bigger than you. And that can also help reduce the stress because you know, hey, I'm not in control, right? So that can reduce stress. As well as you can find social support, whether it's in your higher power or the congregation and the people you meet with and fellowship with. It's just a fantastic opportunity. Again, I'm not telling anyone to be religious. However, if you are, good for you, and you're gonna find a great place to do stress reduction and find success. So again, religion is one area you might wish to engage in for stress reduction and coping. When it comes to coping, as I've already been talking about, social support. Social support is one of the best things you can do for your mentally healthy lifestyle, your mental health, and really your happiness. Relationships, relationships, relationships. That is core to the human experience, and it's actually core to helping our stress be reduced. For example, if you're stressed out and you're not feeling good and you're in danger of maybe becoming depressed, it could be the very social support that saves you. Because somebody says, hey, you know what, Troy, I see you're a little stressed out today. What do you say we go for a run? Or what do you say we go for a hike? Right there in that moment, I may have had an intervention from somebody in my social support that is helping me reduce my stress. But even better, okay? And this is even better than somebody helping you with your stress for stress reduction is actually when you help other people. There is so much power in compassion. There is so much power in kindness, and it can be one of the most crucial parts of your stress reduction and your social support plans. Because when you give to people, it not only gives to them, it's going to give to you. It brings you into focus with what matters. And again, you're exercising your own agency to help other people. So what could feel better? So again, you're going to find yourself social support being just a huge opportunity to make the most of your life, but as well make the most of other people's lives. The last couple things I want to talk about with stress coping and stress management are really, really important. Those two things are to gain a little sense of control and a little sense of predictability. Why this is helpful is because we are anticipation machines. We're anticipating the next moment. We're preparing for the next moment. We have to get ready for the next day. And throughout all the coming and going throughout our lives and days, control is something many of us just simply don't have. So when you can gain just a teensy weensy bit of control, you're gonna help reduce that stress because you're gonna know that you have control over your life, control over your environment, and at least where you can make a difference, you are making a difference. The same can be said about predictability. Gain that sense of predictability. Know that, hey, if a stressor comes up, you can do something about it, or know that you're going to be dealing with a stressor in the near future. Because timing also matters, right? Having predictability of some, there's going to be a meteor striking the planet in, a billion years or so, that doesn't do anything for you. And actually, those types of things can give you more stress. So it is determined about the time and the amount of stress. But in general, if you can gain a sense of control and predictability, you again are going to have those scientific, research-proven ways to help reduce your stress. Just to recap on those different coping mechanisms we talked about, we discussed exercise, we discussed meditation, religion, social support, control, and a sense of predictability. Those are 6 things that are scientifically proven to support you with stress reduction and stress coping. So now we've come to our time in the video where we look at powerful questions so you can begin to operationalize everything that you've learned in this video so you can begin to live what you are learning. And with those powerful questions, we want to look at that thing we call the challenge statement. And that is, how might you? So how might you begin to think of stress in a way that can support your mentally healthy lifestyle? How might you begin to think about the type of stressors you encounter? What are some ways you can consider how your biopsychosocial model is impacted by both short-term and long-term stress? But most importantly, we want you to begin to operationalize and live the stress coping that we know works. So how might you begin an exercise regimen? How might you meditate? How might you find social support, whether it's in a religious group or otherwise? And what are some ways that you can begin to get a little bit of control and a little bit more predictability in your life to support your mentally healthy lifestyle? And I, of course, want to recommend the book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert Sapolsky. It is the best-selling book on stress, and it is one of my favorite stress books. And again, we certainly use it in my class when my students are stressing about when is Professor Mondragon going to get our stress profiles back to us. Of course, that's just a little humor. And always remember, have a sense of humor. So thank you for watching today's video. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment in our section so we can get to know you and maybe some of the ways stress reduction is working in your life and some ideas that we can focus on bringing into your life to support your mentally healthy lifestyle. Thank you.